Right?
2005, which means, when was Claire born? She would have been like 5 or something.
How old were you?
How old were you?
When Twilight came out?
Yeah, 2005.
Yeah. Oh, I was 3.
You were in middle school when Claire was 3. Is that what I just heard in my brain?
I know I've read all the books, seen all the movies, and Jenna has.
I read the first one.
First one.
And I've seen movie 1 and 2.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. What about you, Claire?
I have seen and read all of them.
I'd never given much thought to how I would die, though I had had reason enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I would not have imagined it like this. I stared without breathing across the long room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and he looked pleasantly back at me. Surely it was a good way to die, in the place of someone else, someone I loved, noble even. Okay. I knew that if I'd never gone to Forks, I wouldn't be facing death now. But terrified as I was, I couldn't bring myself to regret the decision. When life offers you a dream so far beyond any of your expectations, it's not reasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. The hunter smiled in a friendly way as he sauntered forward to kill me.
It's very like American Psycho.
To be fair, I mean, it does set up some nice creepy foreshadowing, and you're like, what? But then when you...
I'm hooked. I'm hooked.
Chapter 1. First sight. Ew, it's been so long since I don't even know what's exciting.
It's been a hot decade.
Yeah. My mother drove me to the airport with the windows rolled down. It was 75 degrees in Phoenix. The sky a perfect cloudless blue. I was wearing my favorite shirt, sleeveless, white eyelet lace. No, I was wearing it as a farewell gesture. My carry-on item was a parka. I've never heard people use the word parka until Twilight. In the Olympic Peninsula of Northwest Washington State, a small town named Forks exists under a near-constant cover of clouds. It rains on this inconsequential town more than any other place in the United States of America. Hashtag fun fact.
I wonder if that's true.
I feel like it is. Like, I feel like she Googled it, and then I Googled it, and I was like, oh. It was in this town that I'd been compelled to spend a month every summer until I was 14. That was the year I finally put my foot down. These past 3 summers, my dad, Charlie, vacationed with me in California for 2 weeks instead. Okay. It was to Forks that I now exiled myself. So dramatic! I detested Forks. But, next sentence. I loved Phoenix. Okay. I love the sun and the blistering heat. I love the vigorous, sprawling city. My mom looks like me, except with short hair and laugh lines. What does she have, grump lines?
It's like featureless skin.
I felt a spasm of panic as I stared at her wide, childlike eyes. How could I leave my loving, erratic, harebrained mother to fend for herself? Of course she had Phil now, so the bills would probably get paid. There would be food in the refrigerator, gas in her car, and someone to call when she got lost. But still. Yeah, you definitely need to bail on this situation. I wouldn't complain. Tell Charlie I said hi. I will. I'll see you soon, she insisted. You can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. But I could see the sacrifice in her eyes behind the promise. Don't worry about me, I urged. It'll be great. I love you, Mom. She hugged me tightly for a minute, and then I got on the plane. She was gone. It's a 4-hour flight from Phoenix to Seattle, another hour in a small plane up to Port Angeles, and then an hour drive back down to Forks. Flying doesn't bother me. The hour in the car with Charlie, though, I was a little worried about. Charlie had really been fairly nice about the whole thing. He seemed genuinely pleased that I was coming to live with him for the first time with any degree of permanence. He'd already gotten me registered for high school and was going to help me get a car. Because Charlie's the best, Bella. But it was sure to be awkward with Charlie. Neither of us was what anyone would call verbose. And I didn't know what there was to say regardless. I knew he was more than a little confused by my decision. Like my mother before me, I hadn't made a secret of my distaste for Forks. When I landed in Port Angeles, it was raining. I didn't see it as an omen, just unavoidable. I'd already said my goodbyes to the sun. Charlie was waiting for me with the cruiser. This I was expecting too. Charlie is Police Chief Swan to the good people of Forks. My primary motivation behind buying a car, despite the scarcity of my funds, was that I refused to be driven around town in a car with red and blue lights on top. Charlie gave me an awkward one-armed hug when I stumbled my way off the plane. It's good to see you, Bells, he said, smiling as he automatically caught and steadied me. You haven't changed much. How's Renee? Mom's fine. It's good to see you too, Dad. I found a good car for you. Really cheap, he announced when we were strapped in. What kind of car? Oh wait, no, I said that way too perky. I'm so sorry. What kind of car? I was suspicious of the way he said good car for you as opposed to just good car. Well, it's a truck actually. A Chevy. Where did you find it? Do you remember Billy Black down at La Push? No. He used to go fishing with us during the summer, Charlie prompted. That would explain why I didn't remember him. I do a good job of blocking painful, unnecessary things from my memory. I can't, Bella.
Oh my god.
He's in a wheelchair now. Yeah, he's in a wheelchair now, Charlie continued when I didn't respond, so he can't drive anymore. And he offered to sell me his truck cheap. He bought it in 1984, I think. Did he buy it new? Well, no, I think it was new in the early 60s, or late 50s at the earliest, he admitted sheepishly. Dad! Really, Bella, the thing runs great. They don't build them like that anymore. How cheap is cheap? After all, that was the part I couldn't compromise on. Well, honey, I kind of already bought it for you as a homecoming gift. Charlie peeked sideways at me with a hopeful expression. Wow. Free. He just got you a car. That's really nice, Dad. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Well, now you're welcome, he mumbled, embarrassed by my face. We exchanged a few more comments on the weather, which was wet, and that was pretty much it for conversation. Eventually we made it to Charlie's. He still lived in the small 2-bedroom house that he bought with my mother in the early days of their marriage. There, parked on the street in front of the house that never changed, was my new to me, truck. It was a faded red color, with big rounded fenders and a bulbous cab. Wow, Dad, I love it! Thanks! Exclamation points this time. I'm glad you like it, Charlie said, gruffly, embarrassed again. It took only one trip to get all my stuff upstairs. I got the west bedroom that faced out over the front yard. The room was familiar. It had belonged to me since I was born. Okay then. The desk now held a second-hand computer with a phone line for the modem stapled along the floor to the nearest phone jack. What a throwback. He left me alone to unpack and get settled, a feat that would have been altogether impossible for my mother. It was nice to be alone, not to have to smile and look pleased, a relief to stare dejectedly out the window at the sheeting rain and let just a few tears escape. Bella! Forks High School had a frightening total of only 357, now 58, students. There were more than 700 people in my junior class alone back home.
Remember when we graduated with 50 other people?
Yeah, I know. All of the kids here had grown up together. Their grandparents had been toddlers together. I would be the new girl from the big city. When I finished putting my clothes in the old pine dresser, I took my bag of bathroom necessities and went to the communal bathroom to clean myself up after the day of travel. Communal bathroom sounds like she's in a hostel. Okay. I looked at my face in the mirror as I brushed through my tangled damp hair. Maybe it was the light, but already I looked sallower, unhealthy, like Severus Snape. Facing my pallid reflection in the mirror, I was forced to admit that I was lying to myself. It wasn't just physically that I'd never fit in. And if I couldn't find a niche in a school with 3,000 people, what were my chances here? Very good, Bella. They're very good chances. Everyone will love you. Sometimes I wondered if I was seeing the same things through my eyes that the rest of the world was seeing through theirs. Maybe there was a glitch in my brain. There is, but you don't know yet. I didn't sleep well that night, even after I was done crying. Okay. The constant whooshing of the rain and wind across the roof wouldn't fade into the background. I pulled the faded old quilt over my head and later added the pillow too.
Sounds like she tried to smother herself. Good Lord.
I remember thick fog was all I could see out my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me. I could never see the sky here. It was like a cage. Well, breakfast with Charlie was a quiet event. He wished me good luck at school. I thanked him knowing his hope was wasted. Good luck tended to avoid me. Charlie left first, off to the police station that was his wife and family. Stop being mean to Charlie. I will not tolerate it. I didn't want to be too early to school, but I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I donned my jacket, which had the feel of a biohazard suit, and headed out into the rain.
She's living in the age of the Rona.
Oh, yeah. It was just drizzling still, not enough to soak me through immediately as I reached for the house key that was always hidden under the eaves by the door and locked up. Inside the truck, it was nice and dry. The engine started quickly, to my relief, but loudly, roaring to life and then idling at top volume. Finding the school wasn't difficult, though I'd never been there before. The school was, like most other things, just off the highway. I parked in front of the first building, which had a small sign over the door reading, "Front Office." There were 3 desks behind the counter, one of which was manned by a large, red-haired woman wearing glasses. "I'm Isabella Swan," I informed her, and saw the immediate awareness and light in her eyes. I was expected, a topic of gossip, no doubt. I had her schedule right here and a map of the school. She brought several sheets to the counter to show me. She smiled at me and hoped, like Charlie, that I would like it here in Forks. I smiled back as convincingly as I could. I stuffed everything in my bag, slung the strap over my shoulder, and sucked in a huge breath. No one was going to bite me.
Wait. Did you say no one's gonna bite her? That's so funny. Bro, that's why rereading things is so much fun, though.
Yeah.
Because you notice these things.
I kept my face pulled back into my hood as I walked to the sidewalk, crowded with teenagers. My plain black jacket didn't stand out, I noticed with relief. When would a plain black jacket ever stand out? I felt my breathing gradually creeping toward hyperventilation as I approached the door. The classroom was small. The people in front of me stopped just inside the door to hang up their coats on a long row of hooks. I copied them. I took the slip up to the teacher, a tall, balding man whose desk had a nameplate identifying him as Mr. Mason. He gawked at me when he saw my name, but at least he sent me to an empty desk at the back without introducing me to the class. I kept my eyes down on the reading list the teacher had given me. It was fairly basic. Bronte, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Faulkner. I'd already read everything. When the bell rang, a nasal buzzing sound. A gangly boy with skin problems and hair black as an oil slick, so Severus Snape is at school, leaned across the aisle to talk to me. "Where's your next class?" he asked. I had to check in my bag. Government with Jefferson in Building 6. "I'm headed toward Building 4. I could show you the way." "I'm Eric," he added. I smiled tentatively. "Thanks." We walked back around the cafeteria to the south buildings by the gym. Eric walked me right to the door, though it was clearly marked. "Well, good luck," he said as I touched the handle. "Maybe we'll have some other classes together." He sounded hopeful. I smiled at him vaguely and went inside. One girl sat next to me in both Trig and Spanish, and she walked with me to the cafeteria for lunch. I couldn't remember her name, so I smiled and nodded as she prattled about teachers and classes. We sat at the end of a full table with several of her friends, who she introduced to me. I forgot all their names as soon as she spoke them.
But to be fair, I have forgotten many a person's name after it's been told to me.
Oh, yeah.
That's fair.
It was there, sitting in the lunchroom, trying to make conversation with 7 curious strangers, that I first saw them. The moment! They were sitting in the corner of the cafeteria, as far away from where I sat as possible in the long room. There were 5 of them. They weren't talking, and they weren't eating. Of the 3 boys, one was big, muscled like a serious weightlifter with dark curly hair. Another was taller, leaner, but still muscular and honey blonde. The last was lanky, less bulky, with untidy bronze-colored hair. The girls were opposites. The tall one was statuesque. Her hair was golden, gently waving to the middle of her back. The short girl was pixie-like, thin in the extreme, with small features.
Like a Tim Burton character.
Yeah. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all the students living in this sunless town. Paler than me. They all had very dark eyes, despite the range in hair tones. They also had dark shadows under those eyes. Purplish, bruise-like shadows, as if they were all suffering from a sleepless night. But all this is not why I could not look away. I stared because their faces, so different, so similar, were all devastatingly, inhumanly beautiful. "Who are they?" I asked the girl from my Spanish class whose name I'd forgotten. As she looked up to see who I meant, suddenly he looked at her, the thinner one, the boyish one, and then his dark eyes flickered to mine. In that brief flash of a glance, his face held nothing of interest. "That's Edward and Emmett Cullen, and Rosalie and Jasper Hale. The one who left was Alice Cullen. They all lived together with Dr. Cullen and his wife." Strange, unpopular names, I thought. The kinds of names grandparents had. I finally remembered that my neighbor was called Jessica, a perfectly common name. "They are very nice looking," I struggled with the conspicuous understatement. They're all together, though. Emmett and Rose, and Jasper and Alice, I mean. And they live together. Which ones are the Cullens, I asked. They don't look related. Oh, they're not. They're all adopted. It's a very strange situation. Throughout all this conversation, my eyes flickered again and again to the table where the strange family sat. Have they always lived in Forks, I asked. No.
Duh.
They just moved down 2 years ago from somewhere in Alaska. I felt a surge of pity and relief. Pity because, as beautiful as they were outsiders, clearly not accepted. As I examined them, the youngest, one of the Cullens, looked up and met my gaze, this time with evident curiosity. I peeked at him from the corner of my eye, and he was still staring at me. I looked down again. That's Edward. He's gorgeous, of course, but don't waste your time. I wondered when he turned her down. They were all noticeably graceful, even the big brawny one. It was unsettling to watch. The one named Edward didn't look at me again. I sat at the table with Jessica and her friends longer than I would have if I had been sitting alone. One of my new acquaintances, who considerately reminded that her name was Angela. Yeah, why are you forgetting my name? When we entered the classroom, Angela went to sit at a blacktop lab table, exactly like the ones I was used to. Next to the center aisle, I recognized Edward Cullen by his unusual hair, sitting next to that single open seat. Just as I passed, he suddenly went rigid in his seat. He stared at me again, meeting my eyes with the strangest expression on his face. It was hostile, furious. I noticed that his eyes were black. I kept my eyes down as I went to sit by him, bewildered by the antagonistic stare he'd given me. He was leaning away from me, sitting on the extreme edge of his chair and averting his face like he smelled something bad. Inconspicuously, I sniffed my hair. It seemed an innocent enough odor. I let my hair fall over my right shoulder, making a dark curtain between us, and tried to pay attention to the teacher. I couldn't stop myself from peeking occasionally through the screen of my hair at the strange boy next to me, sitting as far from me as possible. I peeked up at him one more time and regretted it. You never give in, that's when they're looking at you. He was glaring down at me again, his black eyes full of revulsion. At that moment, the bell rang loud. It can't be a loud bell, it's apparently a nasal buzz, so anyway, making me jump. And Edward Cullen was out of his seat, and he was out the door before anyone else was out of their seat. He was so mean. It wasn't fair. I looked up to see a cute baby-faced boy, his pale blonde hair carefully gelled into orderly spikes, smiling at me in a friendly way. I'm Mike. Hi, Mike. Do you need any help finding your next class? I'm headed to the gym, actually. I think I can find it. That's my next class, too. He seemed thrilled, though it wasn't that big of a coincidence in a school this small. But as we were entering the gym, he asked, so, did you stab Edward Cullen with a pencil or what? I've never seen him act like that. So I wasn't the only one who had noticed. And apparently, that wasn't Edward Cullen's usual behavior. He's a weird guy. Mike lingered by me instead of heading to the dressing room. If I were lucky enough to sit by you, I would have talked to you. I smiled at him.
That is not subtle.
I smiled at him before walking through the girls' locker room door. The gym teacher, Coach Clapp.
Guys, I bet he teaches sex ed too.
Coach Clapp.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I know. Found me a uniform, but didn't make me dress down for today's class. The final bell rang. I walked slowly to the office to return my paperwork. Edward Cullen stood at the desk in front of me. He didn't appear to notice the sound of my entrance. I stood pressed against the back wall, waiting for the receptionist to be free. He was arguing with her in a low, attractive voice. I quickly picked up the gist of the argument. He was trying to trade from 6-hour biology to another time. Any other time. I just couldn't believe that this was about me. It was impossible that a stranger could take such a sudden, intense dislike to me. Is it? And he turned slowly to glare at me. His face was absurdly handsome, with piercing, hate-filled eyes. I don't know, usually when someone has hate-filled eyes, I don't notice if they're attractive. I'm just like, the look only lasted a second, but it chilled me more than the freezing wind. He turned back to the receptionist. Never mind, then, he said hastily, in a voice like velvet. I can see it's impossible. And he turned on his heel without another look at me and disappeared out the door. How did your first day go, dear? The receptionist asked maternally. Fine, I lied, my voice weak. I headed back to Charlie's house, fighting tears the whole way there. End of chapter.
It's a big chapter.
Even if you have a good day, if the last 10 minutes are bad, the whole day's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would handle it well if someone just looked like they wanted to murder me, and I'm like, what? Especially when you already have, like, the nerves of being, like, at a new school and it's your first day.
Oh, yeah.
And then she could have been like, Jessica, what's up with him? And she'd be like, girl, seriously, don't even waste your time. And then she'd be like, all right, swear. I have so many thoughts, especially on books, like, all the books, never mind.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. All the stuff, all the good things that are coming. Bye guys. See you tomorrow.
Bye.